Commander Thomas Reed stared at the massive screen in front of him, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. The radar display at the United Earth Defense Command Center showed something impossible. 15 large objects had just appeared past Mars' orbit, and they were heading straight for Earth. "How did they get past our early warning systems?" he asked, his voice steady despite the situation. The control room buzzed with activity as operators worked at their stations, their faces lit by blue screen light. "Sir, they just appeared," Lieutenant Mary Wilson reported from her station. "No warp signatures, no light speed delay. They weren't there 1 second, and the next second they were." Reed placed his coffee cup down carefully. After 20 years in the UEDC, he had trained for first contact scenarios hundreds of times. He never expected it to happen during his morning coffee break. "Show me the ships," he ordered, and the main screen switched to telescope views. The vessels were beautiful in a strange way. They looked like giant silver leaves drifting through space, their surfaces gleaming in the sunlight. Each one was bigger than the largest aircraft carrier ever built on Earth. "Sir," Wilson called out. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies. The message is, it's in English." Reed straightened his uniform. "Put it through." A deep voice filled the command center. "People of Earth, we are the Galactic Confederation. Your planet has been monitored for the past 300 years. The time has come for your assessment. Prepare for our arrival. Resistance would be unfortunate." The room fell silent. Reed looked around at his team. Some looked scared, others angry, but all waited for his response. He had trained these people well. "Get me the president," Reed said calmly, "and someone bring me a fresh coffee. I have a feeling we're going to need it." Within 30 minutes, the UEDC Command Center had become the heart of Earth's response. The president's face filled one screen while military and scientific advisors populated others. Despite the crisis, Reed noticed with pride that his people maintained their professionalism. "The aliens expect us to panic," Reed explained to the assembled leaders. "That's why they made their announcement in English and mentioned monitoring us. They're trying to show power." Dr. Emily Matthews, Earth's leading xenolinguist, spoke up from her video feed. "Commander Reed is right. The choice of words, the dramatic entrance, it's all meant to intimidate us. But there's something else. They said, assessment. That suggests they have criteria, rules they follow." The president nodded slowly. "So what do you suggest, Commander?" Reed smiled slightly. "They expect us to either fight or surrender. I say we do neither. Let's surprise them. Dr. Matthews, help me draft a response." 10 minutes later, Reed stood before the communication array. He spoke clearly and calmly. "Galactic Confederation vessels, this is Commander Thomas Reed of the United Earth Defense Command. We acknowledge your arrival and request a diplomatic meeting to discuss the assessment you mentioned. We are preparing appropriate facilities for your representatives and look forward to peaceful dialogue." The silence that followed felt endless. Reed could hear his own heartbeat as they waited for a response. Finally, the alien voice returned, and this time it carried a note of surprise. "You wish to discuss terms?" "Of course," Reed replied. "That's how civilized species should interact, isn't it?" Another long pause followed. Reed imagined the aliens conferring among themselves, thrown off by this unexpected response. "Very well," the voice finally said. "We will send a diplomatic vessel. Your response is noted." As the transmission ended, Reed turned to his team. "Well, looks like we're hosting some guests. Let's show them that humanity knows how to make a good first impression." Dr. Matthews smiled from her video feed. "Commander, I think we just scored our first point in whatever game they're playing." Reed picked up his fresh coffee and took a sip. "Maybe so, Doctor, but something tells me this is just the beginning. Let's get to work. We have aliens to welcome." The next few hours would prove crucial for humanity's future, but Earth's first response had already set the tone. The Galactic Confederation had expected fear or defiance. Instead, they got something they never anticipated: diplomatic professionalism from a species they considered primitive. Humanity's first surprise wouldn't be its last. The conference room at UEDC headquarters had been prepared with great care. Dr. Emily Matthews walked around the large table one last time, checking every detail. The room looked simple but professional, exactly what they needed for this historic meeting. "The alien ship has entered Earth's atmosphere." Commander Reed's voice came through her earpiece. "They'll be here in 10 minutes. Emily straightened her blue blazer and took a deep breath. As Earth's lead negotiator, she knew the weight on her shoulders. The future of humanity might depend on what happened in this room. The alien ship landed with surprising grace for its size. It looked like a giant silver tundra, somehow both beautiful and intimidating. When the door opened, Emily stood straight and calm, even though her heart was racing. 3 aliens walked out. They were tall and looked almost human, except for their silvery skin and large, dark eyes. The one in front wore what appeared to be a formal robe in deep purple. "Welcome to Earth," Emily said with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Emily Matthews, Earth's diplomatic representative." The lead alien blinked slowly, clearly surprised by her calm greeting. "I am Ambassador Telnar of the Galactic Confederation. We expected more security forces." Emily gestured to the conference room entrance. "We believe starting with trust is better than starting with weapons. Please, follow me." Inside, Emily noticed how the aliens kept looking around, as if waiting for a trap or signs of fear. They seemed unsure how to handle humans who weren't scared of them. "Let us be direct," Ambassador Telnar said after they sat down. "Your species is primitive by our standards. You have barely reached your own moon. You still used fossil fuels. You haven't even unified your planet completely." Emily nodded. "Those are facts we're aware of. But wouldn't a truly primitive species be unable to acknowledge its own limitations?" The aliens looked at each other. Emily could tell she had scored a point. "Perhaps," Telnar said slowly, "we should explain why we are here. The Confederation has rules. When we find developing worlds, we test them. Those who pass join us. Those who fail." He left the sentence hanging. "And what are these tests?" Emily asked, keeping her voice steady. 3 trials, Telnar explained. "Combat, to prove your strength. Innovation, to prove your intelligence. Problem solving, to prove your wisdom." Emily leaned forward slightly. "And if we refuse? Then you prove yourselves unworthy, and we leave. But your world will be marked as failed. No trade, no contact, no protection from other species who might not be as diplomatic as we are." The threat was clear, but Emily didn't react to it. Instead, she pulled out a tablet and started taking notes. "Please tell us more about these trials. We'll need details to select our representatives." Again, the aliens seemed thrown off by her businesslike approach. "You accept the challenge?" Telnar asked. Emily looked up from her tablet. "Ambassador, humanity has faced challenges throughout its history. Each time, we had a choice: give up or push forward. We're still here because we always choose to push forward. You understand failure means isolation from the galactic community, and success means joining it," Emily replied. "We prefer to focus on opportunities rather than threats." The aliens spoke among themselves in their own language for a moment. Finally, Telnar turned back to Emily. "Very well. You have 3 days to choose your champions. The combat trial will be first. Your chosen warrior will face our champion in single combat." Emily nodded and made another note. "Will you provide details about the combat format? We'll need to select the right person for the challenge." "You continue to surprise us, Dr. Matthews," Telnar said. "Most species either rage against the trials or beg for mercy. You treat it like a business meeting." Emily smiled. "Maybe that's because we see you as potential partners rather than just judges. Now about those combat details." The meeting continued for another hour. With each question Emily asked, with each calm response she gave, she could see the aliens' perception of humanity shifting. They had expected primitive reactions, fear, anger, or desperation. Instead, they got professionalism, curiosity, and quiet confidence. As they left, Telner turned to Emily one last time. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Dr. Matthews. Perhaps we're something you haven't considered, Ambassador," she replied. "Perhaps we're just human." Lieutenant James Cooper stood in the preparation room, looking at the alien weapon in his hands. It was beautiful, all silver and blue, but he preferred his old combat knife, which sat on the bench beside him. "You have 30 minutes until the trial begins," Commander Reed said from the doorway. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm about to fight an alien in front of the whole world," Cooper replied with a small smile. "No pressure." The combat arena was actually a large empty warehouse that the aliens had converted for the trial. They had added strange blue lighting and what looked like force fields around the fighting area. Cooper had spent the last 3 days learning about the alien weapon. It was called the Light Staff, a high-tech fighting stick that could create energy fields. The aliens seemed proud when they gave it to him, as if they were giving a toy to a child. "Remember," Reed said quietly, "they expect you to try using their weapon like they do. That's why we chose you." Cooper nodded. He hadn't won 3 martial arts championships by following the rules. He had won by adapting and surprising his opponents. The alien champion entered from the other side of the arena. He was tall, with silver skin that gleamed in the blue light. He carried the same type of weapon, but moved with it like it was part of his body. Ambassador Telner's voice boomed through the arena. "The combat trial will now begin. The fight continues until one warrior submits or is unable to continue. Murder is not permitted." He paused. "Though we doubt that will be a concern." Cooper heard the insult, but didn't react. He had a plan. The alien warrior activated his light staff. Blue energy glowed at both ends. He spun it in a complex pattern that was clearly meant to intimidate. Cooper just stood there, holding his light staff loosely. He could hear whispers from the alien observers. They'd probably thought he was scared. The alien attacked first, as Cooper had hoped. The warrior moved incredibly fast, the light staff becoming a blur of blue energy. Cooper barely blocked the first 3 strikes. "Your species is young," the alien warrior said as he attacked. "You cannot hope to match centuries of combat training." Cooper didn't waste energy talking. He kept blocking, moving backward, letting the alien think he was overwhelmed. All the while, he was watching, learning, seeing patterns in the alien's perfect but predictable style. 5 minutes passed. Cooper had small burns on his arms from near misses. The alien wasn't even breathing hard. "Submit," the warrior said. "There is no shame in accepting superior skill." Cooper shook his head. "You know what's interesting?" he said, still backing away. "You're so focused on showing how well you can use this weapon," he dropped the light staff, "that you forgot about everything else." The alien paused, confused. That's when Cooper moved. He ducked under a swing, got inside the alien's guard, and grabbed his combat knife from a hidden sheath. Before the warrior could react, Cooper was behind him, knife at his throat. "Submit," Cooper said quietly. The arena went silent. The alien warrior stood frozen, his perfect weapon useless at close range. This is not proper combat," the warrior said, shocked. "No," Cooper agreed. "This is survival. This is how humanity has lived through every challenge we faced. We adapt. We change the rules. We survive." For 10 long seconds, nobody moved. Then, slowly, the alien warrior lowered his light staff. "I submit," he said. The force fields came down. Ambassador Telner looked like he had swallowed something sour. "The human wins the combat trial," he announced, though the method was unexpected. Cooper helped the alien warrior up, showing respect. "Good fight," he said, Maybe next time you can show me how to use that staff properly." The warrior stared at him for a moment, then made a sound that might have been a laugh. Perhaps that would be interesting. As Cooper walked back to Commander Reed, he heard the aliens talking among themselves. They sounded confused, worried, and maybe a little impressed. "Well done," Reed said quietly. "You just showed them something they never expected to see." "What's that, sir?" "A primitive species teaching them a lesson about real combat." Cooper smiled. One trial down, 2 to go. Humanity was just getting started. Rebecca Anderson stared at the hologram floating in front of her. It showed an alien colony on a distant planet, complete with tall buildings and strange vehicles flying between them. Everything looked perfect except for one problem. The colony was running out of power. "This is your innovation challenge," Ambassador Telner explained. "Colony Beta 7 loses power in 10 days. Their main reactor is failing. Fix it." Rebecca looked at the complex alien technology displayed in the hologram. She had been Earth's top engineer for 15 years, but this was far beyond anything she had worked with before. "Can I see the reactor specs?" she asked, pulling out her tablet. The aliens shared confused looks. "You understand atomic fusion technology?" one of them asked. "Try me," Rebecca said with a small smile. They had given her 3 hours to solve the problem. She planned to use every minute. The reactor specs appeared in the hologram. Rebecca's eyes widened, not because it was too complex, but because she saw something familiar. "This is interesting," she said, walking around the hologram. "Your reactor uses magnetic fields to contain the fusion reaction, right?" "Correct," an alien technician replied. "The most advanced containment system in the galaxy." Rebecca nodded. "And that's your problem." She pointed to the magnetic field projectors. "Your system is too perfect." The aliens stared at her. "Too perfect?" Telnar asked. "Explain." Rebecca pulled up the colony's power readings. "See these spikes? Your magnetic field is so strong it's actually squeezing the reaction too much. You're fighting against your own containment system." She walked to a workbench and grabbed some paper. The aliens watched curiously as she started drawing with a simple pencil. "Sometimes the best solutions are the simple ones," she said as she sketched. "On Earth, we learned this lesson the hard way. More power isn't always better. Sometimes you need to work with nature, not against it." Rebecca drew a new design, one that looked much simpler than the alien version. "What if we did this? Use weaker magnetic fields but arrange them in a spiral pattern. Let the plasma flow naturally instead of forcing it." The alien technician studied her drawing. "But this design is primitive compared to ours," one said. "Exactly," Rebecca smiled. "Your design uses huge amounts of power just to contain the reaction. My design works with the plasma's natural movement. Less control, but much more efficient." She input her design into their computer system. The simulation showed power output increasing by 40%, while using half the energy for containment. "Impossible," an alien engineer said. "This goes against all our standard protocols." "Maybe that's why you're having problems," Rebecca replied. "You're so focused on perfect control that you're missing simpler solutions. Sometimes you need to step back to move forward." The aliens huddled together, speaking in their language. Rebecca used this time to refine her design further. "This is unprecedented," Telner finally said. "You suggest we solve our power crisis by using less advanced technology." Rebecca shook her head. "No, I suggest combining your advanced technology with basic principles. It's not about going backwards, it's about finding the right balance." She showed them more simulations, explaining how her design could be improved using their advanced materials. With each explanation, she could see their doubt turning to interest. "Your solution is unusual," Telnar admitted after 2 hours, "but the simulations show it would work. You have passed the innovation trial." Rebecca saved her designs to their system. "You know what's really innovative?" she asked. being willing to learn from everyone, even those you think are less advanced. As she packed up her tablet, she heard the aliens discussing her design with growing excitement. They had expected her to fail when faced with their advanced technology. Instead, she had shown them a new way of thinking. Simple isn't the same as primitive, she said to Commander Reed, who had been watching quietly. Sometimes the best innovations come from seeing old problems in new ways. Reed nodded. 2 trials down, 1 to go, ready to see what else humanity can teach them. Rebecca looked back at the aliens, who were still studying her design. I think they're starting to learn that lesson on their own. Dr. Michael Hayes walked into a room filled with stars. The aliens had created a perfect hologram of a dying solar system, and somewhere in this beautiful disaster was humanity's final test. This is a real situation, Ambassador Telner explained. The Proxima binary system is collapsing. 200,000 colonists need evacuation. You have 6 hours to find a solution. Michael adjusted his glasses and looked at the swirling stars. One was bright red and swollen, ready to explode. The other was small and dim, pulling its bigger partner apart. Can I see the evacuation plans you've already tried? He asked. Telnar waved his hand, and several holograms appeared. They showed massive ships trying to reach the colonies, but the dying stars made it impossible. Their gravity was too strong, and their radiation too dangerous. We have lost 15 rescue attempts, Telner said. The system is too unstable for our ships to enter. Michael walked through the hologram, studying everything. The other aliens watched him, probably expecting him to give up quickly. But Michael had spent his life solving puzzles, and this was just a very big puzzle. Tell me about the colonists, he said suddenly. The aliens looked confused. What about them? Everything. Where do they live? What resources do they have? How do they survive in this system? Telner brought up more holograms showing underground colonies, protected from the star's radiation by thick layers of rock. The colonists had ships, but they were too small for evacuation. Michael smiled. There's your answer. What answer? Telnar asked. The colonists cannot escape. The stars will destroy any ship that tries to leave. Who said anything about leaving? Michael walked to the center of the room. Computer, show me the system's asteroid belt. A ring of rocks appeared between the stars. Michael pointed to it. The colonists don't need to leave the system. They just need to survive until the stars stabilize. The aliens stared at him. That could take years, one said. Exactly, Michael replied. And these people already know how to live underground, protected from radiation. The asteroids in this belt are big enough to hold colonies, and they're far enough from both stars to be safe. He started marking asteroids on the hologram. Look, these 20 could hold all the colonists. They already have mining equipment to dig in. They have small ships that can reach the asteroids without attracting too much gravity. Instead of trying to leave, they can just move house. The room went quiet. Michael kept working, showing how the colonists could transfer their equipment and build new underground homes in the asteroids. This is not evacuation, Telner said finally. This is migration. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to change how you think about it, Michael explained. You were so focused on getting people out that you didn't consider letting them stay safely. He showed them more calculations. The asteroid belt was stable, protected from the worst effects of the dying stars. The colonists could wait there safely until the stars finished their dance of death. But this solution is so simple, an alien scientist said. Simple works, Michael replied, especially when complex solutions keep failing. The aliens talked among themselves for a long time. Michael waited patiently, adding more details to his plan. Finally, Telnar turned to him. Dr. Hayes, your solution is unexpected. It uses no advanced technology. It requires no heroic rescue missions. It is primitive. But it will work, Michael said quietly. Telnar was silent for a moment. Yes, it will work. You have passed the final trial, though not in any way we anticipated. Michael looked at the hologram of the dying stars. You know what I think? I think sometimes we get so caught up in finding advanced solutions that we forget about the simple ones. Humanity isn't primitive. We just haven't forgotten our basic problem-solving skills. As the aliens began discussing how to implement his plan, Michael saw Commander Reed smiling from the doorway. Earth had passed all 3 trials, and they had done it by being uniquely human. Ready to show them what else we can do? Reed asked. Michael nodded. I think we're just getting started. Commander Thomas Reed sat at the head of the conference table, looking at the stack of data tablets the aliens had just given him. Each one contained years of secret observations about Earth. What he read made him both angry and amused. So, he said, looking at Ambassador Telnar, you've been watching us for 300 years. Correct, Telnar replied. The alien looked uncomfortable, which made Reed smile inside. And in all that time, you never noticed that we were advancing faster than any species you'd ever seen. Dr. Emily Matthews picked up one of the tablets. According to this, most species take 1,000 years to go from first powered flight to space travel. We did it in 66 years. The aliens shifted in their seats. We thought it was random luck, one of their scientists said. Primitive beings sometimes make lucky discoveries. Lieutenant Cooper, who had won the combat trial, laughed. Lucky? We went from horse-drawn carriages to self-driving cars in just over a century. That's not luck. That's determination. Rebecca Anderson, their engineering champion, was reading another tablet. They'd been watching our technology grow but measuring it all wrong. Look at this. They thought our computers were primitive because they're not biological like theirs. We made mistakes, Telnar admitted. Big mistakes. Your species doesn't follow any pattern we've seen before. Dr. Michael Hayes nodded as he studied the data. You expected us to develop like you did, but we took a completely different path. Reed stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the alien ships hovering over the city. They didn't look as intimidating anymore. Let me get this straight, he said. You watched us split the atom, invent computers, reach space, and create artificial intelligence. You saw us recover from world wars and natural disasters. You watched us solve problems in ways you'd never imagined. And you still thought we were primitive. Your methods seemed unsophisticated, Telnar said carefully. Unsophisticated. Rebecca pointed to her tablet. We built quantum computers while you were still using grown crystals. We made artificial gravity while you were still using rotation systems. We just did it differently than you expected. Emily leaned forward. That's why you really came, isn't it? Not to test us, but because we scared you. The room went quiet. Telnar looked at his fellow aliens, then slowly nodded. Your progress was too fast, he admitted. Some members of the Confederation wanted to stop you before you became a threat. But instead, you decided to test us, Reed said. Yes, we needed to know if you were ready to join galactic society, or if you were too dangerous to allow to develop further. Michael Hayes laughed softly. And we surprised you by passing your tests in ways you never expected. Every trial, Telnar agreed. The combat trial. We expected brute force. You showed adaptability. The innovation trial. We expected failure. You showed elegant simplicity. The problem-solving trial. We expected surrender. You showed wisdom. Reed walked back to the table. So what happens now? Now, Telnar stood up. Now we have to decide what to do with a species that breaks all our rules about development. A species that solves problems in ways we never considered. A species that might change everything we think we know about civilization. Sounds exciting, Cooper said with a grin. Sounds dangerous, Telnar corrected. Sounds human, Emily said quietly. Reed looked at his team. The warrior, the engineer, the scientist, and the diplomat. Each had shown the aliens something different about humanity. Each had proved that being different wasn't the same as being primitive. Well, Ambassador, Reed said, I think you have two choices. You can try to stop us from developing, which honestly, I wouldn't recommend. He smiled. Or you can work with us and see what humans and aliens can accomplish together. Telnar looked at him for a long moment. You continue to surprise us, Commander Reed. Get used to it, Ambassador. That's what humans do best. Dr. Emily Matthews stood before the Galactic Confederation's Council. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from 1,000 worlds, all watching her with curious eyes. Some looked almost human, others were completely alien, but all waited to hear what Earth had to say. You've tested us, Emily began. Now it's our turn to test you. A murmur ran through the crowd. Ambassador Telnar, sitting in the front row, looked surprised but interested. Earth has conditions for joining the Confederation, Emily continued. First, we want to share our technology and methods freely. No more hiding knowledge or calling simple solutions primitive. This is not how things are done, one council member said. He had blue skin and 4 arms. New members accept our ways. Emily smiled. That's exactly the problem. You've done things the same way for so long that you've stopped looking for new ideas. She pressed a button on her tablet. The room's giant screen showed Lieutenant Cooper's combat victory, Rebecca's innovative reactor design, and Dr. Hayes's asteroid colony solution. Look at these solutions, Emily said. Each one worked better than your standard approaches. Why? Because we thought differently. We didn't know we were supposed to fail, so we succeeded. Commander Reed stepped forward. We've studied your records. The Confederation hasn't had a major scientific breakthrough in 50 years. You've stopped growing because you've stopped changing. The council members looked uncomfortable. They knew it was true. Here's our second condition, Emily continued. We want to create a new division within the Confederation, a team that looks for simple solutions to complex problems, a place where different ways of thinking are celebrated, not dismissed. And who would lead this division? Another council member asked. We would at first, Reed answered, but it would be open to anyone who wants to think in new ways, humans and aliens working together, learning from each other. Rebecca Anderson stepped up next. She had brought some of her old engineering projects, simple machines that solved complex problems. Look at this, she said, holding up what looked like a child's toy. It's a water purifier made from plastic bottles and charcoal. We use it in disaster areas. Simple, cheap, and it saves lives. Your advanced filters cost too much for poor worlds to use. Sometimes the primitive solution is the better solution. The council chamber grew noisy as members discussed among themselves. Emily watched them carefully. Some looked angry, others excited, most just confused. There's more, Dr. Hayes added. We found at least 20 problems in your current systems where our primitive solutions would work better. Want to see them? You dare to criticize our technology, a council member shouted. No, Emily said firmly. We dare to help improve it. That's our third condition, equal partnership. We won't join as servants or students. We join as equals, ready to learn and teach. Ambassador Telnar stood up. You realize what you're asking. You want us to change traditions that have existed for thousands of years. Yes, Emily replied simply. Because that's what humans do. We change, we adapt, we grow. And we think the Confederation needs to remember how to do that too. The room erupted in argument. Some council members supported the idea. Others opposed it strongly. The debate raged for hours. Finally, the head counselor raised his hands for silence. This is unprecedented, he said. No species has ever made demands like this before joining. No species like us has ever asked to join before, Reed pointed out. The head counselor looked at Emily. And if we refuse these conditions, then we'll continue developing on our own, she said calmly. And in a few hundred years, we won't be the primitive ones anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien in the room knew she was right. They had seen humanity's speed of development. They had witnessed their problem-solving abilities. Perhaps Telner said slowly, "It is time for the Confederation to evolve." Emily smiled. Humanity hadn't just passed their tests. They had changed the rules of the game entirely. 1 month after the council meeting, Commander Thomas Reeves stood in the new Human Innovation Division headquarters. The building floated in Earth's orbit, a perfect mix of alien and human design. Through the windows, he could see Earth below and the stars above. "The last team just arrived," Dr. Emily Matthews said as she walked in. "You won't believe who joined us." Reed turned to see Ambassador Telner entering the room, wearing a Earth defense uniform modified for his alien form. "Ambassador?" Reed asked, surprised. "Or should I say, Officer Telner?" "Just Telner now," the alien replied. "I resigned from the diplomatic corps. I believe I can do more good here." The room filled with both humans and aliens. Lieutenant Cooper was teaching a group of alien warriors about Earth's martial arts. Rebecca Anderson worked with alien engineers, showing them how to combine their advanced technology with simple solutions. 6 new worlds have already asked to join our division, Emily said, checking her tablet. "They're tired of doing things the old way. They want to learn our methods." "And we want to learn theirs," Dr. Hayes added, walking up with a group of alien scientists. "Did you know they can grow buildings? Actually grow them from special crystals. Imagine combining that with our construction techniques." Reed smiled as he watched humans and aliens working together. The aliens had beautiful hologram displays, but they were learning to use simple paper and pencils too. Sometimes the old ways worked better. "Commander," a young alien called out, "look at this." The alien held up a device that looked like a mix between alien crystal technology and an old Earth radio. "It uses your primitive radio waves, but enhances them with our quantum field. The signal is 10 times stronger, but uses half the power." "Don't call it primitive," Telnar corrected gently. "Call it fundamental. The humans have taught us that simple doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it means strong." Rebecca walked over with her team. "We just solved the power problem on Beta 7 colony. Turns out my reactor design works even better when combined with alien crystals. Who knew our primitive solution could improve their technology so much?" "Everyone's starting to know," Emily said. She showed them her tablet. 3 more Confederation councils have asked for our help. They all have problems their advanced technology can't solve. "And we'll help them," Reed said. "But first, they have to stop thinking in terms of advanced and primitive. There's only one question that matters. Does it work?" The room buzzed with activity. Humans taught aliens about creative problem solving, while aliens shared their advanced knowledge. Both sides were learning that together they could do more than either could do alone. "You know what the best part is?" Cooper said, joining them. "They're starting to joke with us. Actually joke. Turns out aliens can laugh once they stop being so serious about everything." As if to prove his point, laughter erupted from a corner where a human was teaching aliens to play chess. The simple board game had fascinated them more than any computer simulation. "The Confederation is changing," Telnar observed. "More species are questioning the old ways. They're starting to think like humans." "No," Reed corrected. "They're starting to think for themselves. That's what humanity really brought to the galaxy. Not our technology or our methods, but our willingness to try new things." Emily looked out at Earth below them. 1 month ago, they thought we were primitive beings barely worth testing. Now they're copying our ideas and asking for our help. "That's because we showed them something they had forgotten," Reed said. "Progress isn't about having the most advanced technology. It's about having the courage to try new things, even if they seem simple." "So what's next, Commander?" Telnar asked. Reed looked around the room, at humans and aliens working together, learning from each other, growing together. "Next." He smiled. "Next, we show the galaxy what humanity and aliens can really do together. This isn't just a new chapter for Earth, it's a new era for everyone." And as the Earth turned below them, humans and aliens together began writing that new chapter in the story of the galaxy.